Good afternoon and welcome. Assisi. How about that? Able to show. And guiding us each day to help us to know his love and help. So just remember, it's a little heads up on that one. Secondly, confirmation will be coming up, and that will be in May 22nd, Saturday evening, May 22nd, and we'll have Archbishop Schnurr will be here to celebrate confirmation, and so yeah, so and it's always a great blessing for him to be here as well. So again, Saturday evening, 5 p.m. May 22nd will be another mass where we'll have a bunch of pews reserved because of the amount of people for the confirmations. So that too, but but that's still a month away, and we'll get people ready for that as well. So I have an update for the soundproofing panels. First off, we have let's see here. So the first off we have is we have had this past week the company sent us some samples so we can build our build spec and to get to the contractors, but also to help us see what the colors might be or the color possibilities are for this. So we won't have a display this weekend coming up, mainly because Deacon Chris is out of town over the next week and a half. So when he gets back, we'll make sure the display gets out in the gathering space. But I tell you, they look nice, and they're just little examples right now, but they're as what we can see, the colors are very, very close to what we have already of what they sent us. So it was so over the next few weeks we'll have those displays out there, and so we're ready to get that moving, and God willing, and as fast as possible with getting a contractor as well as getting getting the approval from the diocese as well to have that done. So that's where that is at. So we've had two questions come in. The first one came in yesterday, and it asked about Deacon Jacob's ordination mass. So it says each of the candidates for ordination went up to the Archbishop three separate times. One of them was laying out of hands for ordination. What was happening during the other two? All right, so just like any mass where there's a sacrament inside the mass, that sacrament happens after the homily, okay? So what happens is that the liturgy of the word happens like normal, and after the gospel is read, those who are to be ordained are called forward. So once the homily is finished, if you're watching, you saw the Archbishop move to the center of the sanctuary of the cathedral, and then he had then there was someone who called forth the men for ordination, and so for deacon ordination. And so the first presentation is just those who will be ordained deacons. And what's really I remember for my ordination, for deacon ordination, for a transitional deacon, I remember it's very humbling because as they call you forward, you go and stand in front of the bishop, and then the bishop asks a question. This is part of the rite. It says, do you find these men worthy? And then, as part of the rite, it goes, as those who are, how does it go? It goes, for those who are, who's led their formation, those who have seen them, and for the people of God, we find these men worthy. And everybody starts clapping. It's a very, very humbling experience because I went through it twice for deacon and then as priesthood, and that's one of those things. And then they sit down. After they sit down, is the bishop gives the homily, and that homily is really more for the guys to be ordained and hearkening them about what they're about to be ordained into, and also in terms of what the order is supposed to be. And so once the homily is finished, then comes the second part of the ordination rite, and that part is they called forward in terms of the questioning. So this is where you take your promises for ordination of holy orders. So for transitional deacons, it's a promise of obedience, celibacy, and prayer. And so this is as you enter into holy orders. This is when you make these promises of obedience to our ordinary or bishop and his successors, the celibate life, as well as the life of prayer, the prayer for the God's people, especially with the breviary or Liturgy of the Hours. So that's the questioning, can you do this sort of a thing, and will you do this and promise obedience? And so part of it is part of the promise of obedience is you walk forward, and you kneel down, and you put your hands together in prayer, and he puts his hands around yours, and he goes, do you promise obedience to me and my successors? And yes, or I do, is that answer for that one. So that's the problem. Then the next promise is do you promise of celibacy for the people of God? Yes, and then do you promise the life of prayer? So yeah, that is what we see here in the ordination rite, and so it's there's some other promises of holy orders there are other promises of priesthood. So it reminds of service to mankind. You're as a Christ. A newer understanding, not newer, but there's a great book that came out recently. Interaction of the Eucharist, the priest, how the priest and the people, self-giving love of priests. The self-giving love is not just some thing. It's about your life of the celebration of the Eucharist once you become a priest. So yeah, so then, so that's the next thing is so then you promise that and a prayer and then obedience is when you walk up to the bishop, and then what happens? The you lay prostrate. And what the question is that number one, it's like before you enter into the sacrament, it's almost kind of like so you're lay prostrate on the floor, calling on all the angels and saints with us during this time, and for this who are about to be ordained, so that they may fulfill what the promises that they. And it's almost kind of like when you rise as almost the new Christ before you were. Because once you finish the litany of the saints, you then for the laying on of actual. So it's the bread and the wine, and you words of consecration. Baptism is the pouring of the water. Baptism of the Holy Spirit. And also you have for the action of the sacrament. The laying on of hands is what confers the sacrament. And then the presider then had the prayer of consecration over the finally the last step. So the second thing is questioning and the promise of obedience with the hands over each other. The second one is the actual laying on of hands, and the third one that they move forward to is the presentation of the book of the Gospels, because the deacon is the one who proclaims the book of the Gospels at Mass, especially the Gospel at Mass. So the bishop is presenting that in terms of their liturgical ministry. That is what their liturgical ministry is in terms of the proclaiming of the Gospel, and in service to the priest at Mass as well. So that was what was going on during the deacon ordination. So if you get a chance to see it, maybe I'm going to go back to the cathedral's streaming and maybe go back to see if you can watch that again. And it's the promises of prayer, celibacy, and obedience, the laying on of hands, and it's the presentation of the book of the Gospels in terms of the prayer. Practice what you preach what you believe, and teach what you believe. And so the idea is that we only practice our belief and we teach what we believe, which comes from the gospel of Jesus Christ. So that our life then is to be about the preaching of the gospel and of and making sure that what we teach is what we believe. Now, everything is very similar to priest ordination in that regard, where you come forward, you're questioned, just like in deacon ordination, laying on of hands for the sacrament of the conferral of the sacrament. But then instead of the presentation of the book of the Gospels was presented and the paten, and the fact of now your liturgical ministry is at the altar. And so it's like for deacon ordination, the bishop holds one end of the book of the Gospels, and you hold the other one. You come up and you hold part of the chalice in terms of the presentation of the chalice in preparation in the church. And the thing is that a good thing to talk about right now too is that deacons have there's one order of deacon, and we hear people talk about permanent deacon and transitional deacon. So a permanent deacon is someone like Deacon Chris, is someone who is married and has decided that he wants to be, he's called, in a vocation to enter holy orders as a permanent deacon. And in doing so, he enters into the diaconate as one who will always be a deacon, okay? A transitional deacon is one that is a deacon only for a short amount of time in preparation for becoming a priest. So the idea is that for transitional deacons, you're a deacon for, I think canon law says it has to be at least 9 months, but for us, it's about just over a year. So you're ordained the end of April, and then the May of next year, God willing, is when you're ordained a priest. So for Jacob, God willing, Deacon Jacob, is next year in May is when he'll be ordained a priest. Why do I keep saying God willing about ordination? Because we can never assume that it will happen. You know, someone had asked me one time, when do you actually know you're going to be ordained? I said the morning of, or even the night before. You know, it's one of those things where you get your call to orders, you know, about a month ahead of time, you get okayed by the seminary. But it's one of those things where you never assume it. You just keep trying to live that life of what it is. Because like there's some people who have gotten to, you know, a month before deacon ordination and just decided that, you know, this isn't for me. But I think that's part of the discernment as well. So, you know, so that's the question of deacon ordination from that. And so please continue to pray for Deacon Jacob as he continues his discernment moving forward into his vocation, God willing. Just, you know, we take one day at a time. We're all trying to understand vocations. We're all trying to ask God to guide us to understand that. And, you know, and so in doing so, let's just make sure we pray for each other that we're following God's path for our lives. We follow that. So again, it's the 3 ones. The first one is about the promises. Second one, so yeah. So then the last question, second question that we came in. How is St. Thomas Merton connected to Zen Buddhism? You know, so Merton, one, he's not a saint in that regard. He's not St. Thomas Merton, but he's Thomas Merton. Merton had, let's see here. So he had this moment of kind of a spiritual clarity of how grace is all around us. And I think one of the things is that we won't say that he somehow became a Zen Buddhist. And I know it's not your question, but many people have wondered about that. Bishop Barron wrote a very, very good article about the anniversary of his death a few years ago. And reading of Merton was one of the things that helped Barron become a priest. It was, you know, he read Seven Story Mountain. And so, yeah, so one of the things that we see is Bishop Barron did a retreat for, what was it? It was for the brothers at Gethsemane, and his name his name as a monk was Father Lewis. And you're actually not allowed to go back into their cemetery, but I was able to one day. They let us go back there one day, and we found his grave, which was Father Lewis, right there. And the monks that are still down there still call him Father Lewis. That's how I knew him. We knew him as Thomas Merton. But this clarity that he had everything to do about the grace of God. It's all around us. And Bishop Barron, when he was speaking to the monks, they just said, "Will you please tell the people that Father Lewis died a faithful Catholic priest?" Because he did, you know, speak to the Buddhists. He did speak to other people about meditation, because he was trying to learn about meditation from those who have done it in a different way. And my understanding is that he spoke with them as a means of having the way, how can we enrich our meditation, and in doing so, but not so much change Christian meditation or take on a Zen or Eastern understanding of meditation, but a fulfillment or a enriching another understanding, seeing it from a different point of view. And so, he didn't take on any teachings from, my understanding is from the Buddhist or any Eastern philosophies, but what he did do is learn meditation from a different point of view. And in doing so, helps them to enrich Christian meditation. And the thing is this, is that, you find out that who he taught in the novices was St. John of the Cross. So he spoke to them about and taught them the way of St. John of the Cross is for the novices. So we have to be very, very careful. So did he look into it, study it? Yeah, he did. And Bishop Barron would say that would we call him a canonized saint? No, we would not. Hopefully one day, God willing, or hopefully he is a saint known to God. But we have to understand that Father Lewis Thomas Merton looked into that because when he saw grace all around and how have others come to understand truth, and we can see truth in many ways. And even Peter Kreeft wrote in his book, Catholics and Protestants, What Can We Learn from Each Other? He wrote in his book about we can still see the handprint of God in the cultures around the world. We can see the search for truth. We can see the ideas of Trinity in other cultures. We can see all these different things. So we see the handprint of God that unfortunately we say that revelation has not been to there yet, but we see that. So even with meditation and prayer, we can still learn from maybe a different way of understanding meditation, but yet not lose our understanding of Christian meditation, one of Christian prayer as well. All right, so other questions came in. Will my brother be my brother, and my mom be my mom, and my wife be my wife in heaven? All right, so we have about 8 minutes, so I'll do my best to keep us under 8 minutes. The simple answer is yes in that regard, but the answer is, but the other question is why? Why yes? So in this life, we have many connections, okay? We have connections, sacramental connections as spouses. We have, familiar connections as a family of parents and children, grandparents, all those things. And the thing is this, is that in heaven, we know that, especially before the second coming, our souls leave the body and are non-corporeal. So there's no body with a soul at this point in time in heaven. The only one would be the Blessed Mother and Jesus Christ. Because our Lord is divine, second person Trinity, glorified body. Our Blessed Mother was assumed into heaven, body and soul, glorified because of her being conceived immaculately. Now, for us, as we pass, our soul leaves the body, and then the soul will then go on to the judgment, and then God willing, our prayers and all those things, and our holiness in life. Well, our souls have called in the eternal character. The fact that souls are spiritual, they're eternal, and our souls is where our intellect and will reside. A lot of this is the same time Aquinas coming off Aristotle, but understanding what the soul is to the body, and the soul and the body are intermixed in the sense of the soul is what is called the animating principle of matter. So, versus someone else of that makes it that particularity. And even for human beings, soul it makes that particular for that person. So each soul has a particular intellect and will that helps our bodies choose what is good, because our souls are eternal and they're connected to the eternal. So when we talk about conscience, our conscience, that we talk about our brains, is how my choices here and now, kind of match with that eternal intellect. Um, so what we see is that then, so what happens is when we have experience in our life, we learn from those experiences, we take those experiences in, and what our soul does, our soul what's called extracts the eternals. So the things that are objective, that are eternal, but not particular to this world, but but then creates this eternal understanding of mother, father, brother, all these different things, Messiah, all this stuff. And in doing so, we realize then that my recognition I know in this world when my soul leaves the body, because my soul can experience this world as well through my body. Now, in doing so, we have to say now too is that when we're in heaven, does our soul look at our body? Fortunately, I haven't been there in that regard. But our soul is the image of a body here on earth. So how that recognition will happen, I don't really have because I haven't been there. But there will still be connections, especially sacramental connections. I've passed that in terms of for the sacrament of marriage, we know that the bond of marriage ends at time of death. So will the person still receive sacramental grace from the sacrament of marriage once their spouse passes on? Well, in terms of sacrament of marriage, no. But still the actual grace of God with us in the goodness of our life. So there's still connection with God, and there's more than just that. So let's say, well, my brother be my brother, my mom, my wife still be in heaven. And there will still be that. How that's that we'll have. We'll still have those connections. Our souls will still be our same souls, but the glorified body will be different because it's not the body we have now. And so that's it. The simple answer is yes, but that's the reason why behind it. So I'm happy to answer those questions. But just remember that God in His goodness still allows us to have those connections, and will still allow us to have at least those senses of understanding and connection with those who've gone before us. And I kind of go back to Saint Cyprian. Saint Cyprian reminds us, he's one of the church fathers, reminds us that those who have passed on before us, they still long to be with us too. So we long to be with the ones who have passed on before us, and they long to be with us, because remember, we're still one in Christ. So there's still that recognition and those aspects of connections that we have with each other. So I want to thank you for your great questions today. I would suggest if you want to go back and look back at Deacon Jacob's ordination, maybe go back there again, and so you're now seeing those three ways that you presented. Secondly, I would say, remember this weekend we have First Communions, and probably a little bit heavier this weekend, so that we maybe some more pews that are reserved, and then just remember that within a few weeks we'll have those samples in the gathering space for the sound panel. So God bless you. Hope you all have a great week.